What's going on, everyone? So we've talked about the Lakers schedule and how tough it is, especially like the first 5 games. It's going to be rough. But one of the things about this is, where does it rank amongst other schedules in the NBA, right? Like, because I've had that talking point. I've had some people comment and just say like, hey, like everybody's got a tough schedule. Everyone's got to play these guys. But it's not the same, right? It's when do you play these guys, and what order do you play these guys, what part of the season do you play these guys, so on and so forth, right? It's not as straightforward as like, well, everybody has to play these teams. Well, no, there's some teams that have the first 5 games are the first 5 worst teams in the league, right? So like that's a big difference in the Lakers having to play, 4 of the 5 arguably best teams in the league, right? Like there's different degrees to this. Well, here's the list there's an entire list, but these are the top 7, and the Lakers ranked 7th. So the Lakers have the 7th hardest schedule in the entire league, and this is for the whole year, right? That changes as, you move into the season and stuff, but the Lakers have the hardest schedule in several points throughout this season. But overall, in general, the Lakers have the 7th hardest. But they have the second hardest schedule in the Western Conference. The only team that has a harder schedule is the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns have the toughest schedule in the Western Conference. The Lakers are second. Then it's Atlanta, New York, Boston, Philly, and Miami. So all of the tough schedules this year are all the Eastern Conference teams. So again, it goes into the toughness that the Lakers have to face. Now, the Phoenix Suns are in the same boat, right? Again, they have the toughest schedule in the West. They're, for the most part, a new team, just like the Lakers, but they are extremely top-heavy. So I'm actually also very interested to see, how does Phoenix respond during this tough schedule, right? Are they able to figure it out and work it out quick enough? I don't think that they're going to miss the playoffs or be a play-in team or anything like that. And same thing with the Lakers. I don't see that happening. But do they struggle a bit, right? Like we even saw Miami's big three. When they got put together, the first 20 games, they were like under 500 or at 500, right? So is that something we see with Phoenix where it's a little clunky? Bradley Beal is supposed to be the starting point guard. Does he have to take some time to adjust to that? And is it just awkward? Is their lack of depth going to be an issue at any point, right? And now, I've said this before, and I believe this, if Kevin Durant and Devin Booker miss any extensive time, then at that point, I think Phoenix may potentially be a play-in team, right? Like, because if Kevin Durant misses 30 games and Devin Booker miss 30 games, especially if they miss any extensive games together, Phoenix doesn't have enough to stay afloat to ride this out. Bradley Beal and an actually pretty decent Wizards team wasn't even able to make the play-in the Eastern Conference, right? So that's a big thing. And Bradley Beal, he likes to miss a lot of time too. So there's a big question mark with Phoenix. But this isn't a channel about Phoenix. This is a channel about the Lakers. I just thought it was a good point to mention and talk about Phoenix because they're going to have a lot of the same struggles that we have. But outside of that, everybody has very easy schedules and in comparison, right? Compared to what the Lakers have. Lakers have the second toughest in the entire league. And that becomes a problem because teams like Golden State, teams like Minnesota, teams like Denver, like all of these teams, they have easier stretches. They have easier homestands. The Lakers have a really tough road stretch. They have the 15 back-to-backs. They have the most back-to-backs. And they have the toughest back-to-back schedule, right? And this is, yes, a young team, but the 2 stars miss games, and they usually don't play back-to-backs. So that becomes a problem, right? They have a back-to-back where they play, I think it's Memphis and Milwaukee or something like that in a back-to-back. That's tough, right? That could be an issue. Are the Lakers going to be able to develop that chemistry, develop the camaraderie of the team, and kind of flush out all of the ins and outs quick enough to where they're able to really have an impact, right? And they're able to kind of weather this tough schedule because it's tough. So they have a tough back-to-back against Milwaukee, and it is Memphis. So it's Milwaukee and Memphis. They have a tough back-to-back on 3/26/2024 and 3/27/2024. So that is tough, right? But it's game 72 and game 73, right? So at that point, are the Lakers kind of flushed out? Are they working on their playoff rotation? They're getting ready to go into the playoffs. They have everything worked out to where maybe that's not that tough of a schedule. That's not as grueling of a schedule. And then shortly after, for game 76 and 77, they have Toronto and Washington, right? Now, both of those games are at home, and both those games aren't like these incredibly tough teams, but it's towards the end of the season. Are the Lakers kind of like, all right, like we need to get into the playoffs, we need to be healthy, right? Like what does their schedule look like? There's just a lot that goes into this type of schedule. Like I said, they have 15 of the back-to-back games, which is the most in the league. They, previous 2 years, only had 12. So this kind of feels like here, let's make up for the past, right? And the Lakers had a very tough schedule to start last year, and it kind of became rather easy towards the end, and they were able to make that push and end up making the playoffs. That's not really the case this year, right? So, like, we'll just mention their last 12 games, right? So from game 70 on, you have Philadelphia, which we'll see, right? If James Harden sticks around or if they make a trade for a thing. But let's say it's James Harden's bought in, all is good. Let's say it's the Philadelphia of last year, right? They were really good towards the end of the season. You're talking about a legit playoff team, maybe even a contending team. Then you have Indiana. Indiana actually has a very good roster, and they gave us trouble last year, although we're bigger and different this year. But they're going to be trying to make the playoffs. They're going to be a tough team, and they very well could be fighting for a playoff seeding, right? So they may give you 100%. Then you have Milwaukee, Memphis, Indiana again, right? So Milwaukee, arguably the best team in the league. Memphis, we'll see how they go, and if Ja Morant has another thing, but you got to imagine that they're going to want revenge. They're going to be a tough team. They're going to be good this year. And then you have Brooklyn, Toronto, and Washington. Okay, that's an easier stretch, although Brooklyn, I really think, could end up being a bit of a sleeper team this year. We'll see how that works out. Then you got Cleveland, Minnesota, Golden State, Memphis, and New Orleans. So literally, your last 12 games, game 70 to game 82, you have essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of those 12 games are probably against playoff teams and teams fighting for seeding. That's not the same schedule as last year, right? That's not the easy stretch where, you got like Utah twice and Chicago twice. And, so it's going to be challenging, right? But I do think our youth, I do think our depth, I do think our size, I think all of those things are really going to help and play a role. I think that those are all going to be very big factors for the Lakers' success this season. Obviously, how many games does Anthony Davis and LeBron James play? How healthy can they stay throughout the course of this season, right? Because that's kind of been a thing, right? Like, now, my guess is that they both try to play 65 games, right? Because of the new rule where you have to play at least 65 games to meet all of the accolades or have an attempt to gain those, right? Especially LeBron. LeBron's not going to want to, not be an all-star and not be, not be able to potentially win all NBA teams, or, if he has this crazy or be MVP or something like that, right? Like, so LeBron's, I imagine, is going to want to play 65 games. Does Anthony Davis, right? Because if they both play 65 games, then the Lakers are good. That means they'll only miss like 17 games this year. But also, how many minutes do they play, right? Like, instead of missing games entirely, does LeBron just play, say, 15 minutes just to go get his, 10 points or whatever, and then he basically doesn't play the rest of the game? Same thing with Anthony Davis. Does Anthony Davis just, play like 4 minutes a quarter just to like say he was on the court and he basically gets load managed, right? Like, these are all things that may or may not be a factor this season. But all in all, I just wanted to kind of highlight and go over just the schedule and kind of give an explanation of exactly what I mean by how tough it is, because, like I said, I got a lot of comments from people that were like, yeah, but everyone has to play. Everyone plays tough schedules. All the teams in the West have to play each other. Again, it's not all schedules are equal, right? Like, yeah, teams have to play the Lakers 4 times, but do they play the Lakers, the Nuggets, and the Bucks back to back games? Or is it like they play the Lakers and then they play like, the Spurs, and then they play like, the Raptors, and then they play like Chicago, and then they play Denver, and then they play, these 3 bad teams, and then they play Milwaukee, right? Like, there's differences. How many back-to-backs do they have? What teams are they playing on those back-to-backs, right? Like, all of those things are factors when you equate the schedules, right? And they have some stretches that are just grueling, right? Especially like March. March's schedule is, that's tough. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think that this could be a problem? Do you think, Lakers will be good? I'm not, like, too worried about it at all. Like, I'm not. Like, I think the Lakers will be fine. Like I said, I think they have more than enough depth, talent, size, everything to get through this. My only question is just, like, chemistry, right? The beauty is at least the core players, they have that chemistry, so that's good, right? Because they played that grueling just playoff stretch, and then also had like 8 games or whatever leading into that. So I imagine that full training camp, full preseason, full regular season, they'll be able to figure it out. But it is a question, right? Anyway, again, love your thoughts and opinions, however you feel. Down